Some electric cars get praised, some get ignored. And then there are these, the EVs the internet absolutely loves to hate. Cars that get roasted in the comments, torn apart in reviews, and turned into memes the second they are revealed. But here is the question I want to answer today. Are these cars actually as bad as everyone says? Or are we all just being a little mean for the clicks? Today on Nick's Car Review, I am counting down the most hated electric cars on the planet and finding out whether the hate is actually deserved. Let's get into it. Kicking off the list at number 10 is a car that became a cautionary tale for the entire EV startup world, the Fisker Ocean. When this electric SUV was first detailed, expectations were sky high. The design looked sharp, the promises were bold, and a lot of people were genuinely excited about what Fisker was bringing to the market. Unfortunately, things went downhill fast, and the Ocean turned into one of the most talked about failures in recent EV history. The Fisker Ocean was plagued by software problems, quality control issues, and a parent company that ultimately ran into serious financial trouble and went under. Owners reported all kinds of glitches, everything from unresponsive screens to braking concerns to doors that would not open properly. And when the company collapsed, buyers were left stranded, worried about warranty support, replacement parts, and whether their car would ever receive another software update again. That kind of uncertainty is exactly what turns a promising car into a hated one almost overnight. Here's the thing though, and I want to be fair to it. The Ocean itself was not a fundamentally terrible vehicle on paper. The exterior design was genuinely attractive. The interior had some clever and unique ideas, including a rotating central screen and a California mode that dropped all the windows at once. And the range numbers were actually competitive, with some versions rated for over 350 miles. The hate it gets is less about the car being a bad driving machine and more about the complete chaos surrounding the company behind it. It is a reminder that buying an EV is not just about the car itself, it is about trusting the company will still be around to support it for years to come. The Fisker Ocean is a genuinely sad story of real potential that got buried under execution problems and financial mismanagement. It earns its spot on this list not because it is the worst car to drive, but because of everything that went wrong around it. Number 9 is a car that gets hated for a completely different reason. Its absolutely enormous size and weight. The GMC Hummer EV. This thing is a genuine monster. It weighs over 9,000 pounds, which makes it one of the heaviest passenger vehicles of any kind on sale today. The battery pack alone weighs about as much as an entire Volkswagen Golf. Let that sink in for a second. The battery in this truck weighs as much as some entire compact cars. The criticism comes from several angles. Some people argue the Hummer EV is just fundamentally unnecessary, that it uses far too many resources, raw materials, and battery capacity for what most people actually need from a vehicle. There is a real environmental argument that building something this massive somewhat defeats the efficiency purpose of going electric in the first place. Others point to the safety concerns, arguing that a 9,000-pound truck packing over 1,000 horsepower that can launch to 60 in under 3 seconds could pose a serious risk to other road users, smaller cars, and pedestrians in a collision. Those are fair points worth taking seriously. But here is the other side of the story. The Hummer EV is genuinely capable and genuinely impressive as a piece of pure engineering. It has features like crab walk that lets it drive diagonally using 4-wheel steering, massive range, climbing into the high 300s on the top trims, removable roof panels, and a road presence that absolutely nothing else can match. And despite all the hate, people are actually buying them. GMC moved nearly 16,000 of these in a single year. So is the Hummer EV hated? Absolutely. Is it also kind of an incredible technological achievement? Also yes. The Hummer EV is the definition of excessive, and depending entirely on who you ask, that excess is either the whole problem or the entire point. Number 8 is one of the most important EVs ever made, and also one of the most criticized as it aged. The older generation Nissan Leaf. Now I want to be clear right away, because the brand new 2026 Leaf is a genuinely great car that we have talked about before. But the earlier Leaf models, especially the ones from the early to mid-2010s, earned a reputation that still follows the nameplate around today. Here's where the hate comes from. The older Leaf used an air-cooled battery rather than a liquid-cooled one, which means it did not manage heat well at all. And heat is the #1 enemy of an EV battery. The result was significant battery degradation over time, especially for owners living in hot climates. There are countless stories of early Leafs in places like Arizona and Texas losing huge chunks of their range within just a few years, some dropping to half their original range far sooner than anyone expected. For a car people bought specifically to be practical and economical, watching the range shrink year after year was genuinely frustrating. On top of that, the older Leaf used the CHAdeMO fast charging port, which is now basically obsolete. New CHAdeMO chargers are not being installed anymore, and there's no reliable, affordable adapter to connect it to modern charging networks. So owners of older Leafs are increasingly stuck with limited public charging options. But here is the fair perspective. The Nissan Leaf was a genuine pioneer. When it launched in 2011, it was one of the very first mass-market, highway-capable, affordable electric cars in the world. It helped prove that everyday people could actually live with an EV. Without the Leaf paving the way, the entire EV market might look very different today. So while the older models absolutely earned their criticism for battery degradation and outdated charging, the nameplate deserves real respect for what it accomplished. The hate is partly fair, but it ignores just how much this car did for electric vehicles as a whole. Number 7 is a car that got absolutely buried by one of the biggest recalls in EV history. The Chevrolet Bolt, specifically the earlier models before the recent relaunch. And just like the Leaf, I want to be fair here, because the brand new returning Bolt is a fantastic value. But the original Bolt went through a genuinely rough period that earned it a spot on this list. The big story was the battery fire risk. The 2017 through 2022 Bolt models were hit with a massive recall over a defect in the LG supplied battery cells that created a risk of fires. This was not a small issue. It was a multi-billion-dollar recall that affected basically the entire production run. Owners were told to park their cars away from buildings, not to charge overnight, and to limit their state of charge. For a while, owning a Bolt meant living with real anxiety about your own car. That kind of headline does enormous damage to a vehicle's reputation, and the Bolt became a punching bag because of it. Beyond the recall, owners also logged complaints about uncomfortable seats, occasional power loss issues, and real-world range sometimes falling short of the official estimates. But here is the genuinely interesting twist. GM and LG replaced the battery modules or entire packs on affected vehicles at no cost to owners, and when they did, the battery warranty reset from the date of installation. So a lot of these Bolts ended up with brand new batteries and fresh warranty coverage. The replacement batteries have had basically no reported issues since. So the Bolt went from being one of the most feared EVs to being one of the best used EV values on the market, precisely because of how the recall was ultimately handled. The hate was deserved during the crisis, but the story has a surprisingly happy ending. Number 6 is the new kid on the block that got roasted hard the moment it arrived in America, the VinFast VF8. VinFast is a Vietnamese automaker, part of a massive conglomerate that owns everything from hotels and hospitals to theme parks and a university. They transitioned to a full EV company in 2022 and brought the VF8 crossover to American shores with big ambitions. On paper, the VF8 is a perfectly normal-looking crossover. The Plus variant has a 90 kilowatt-hour battery, good for around 235 miles of range, and it produces a healthy 402 horsepower from 2 motors. But the early reviews were generally brutal. Journalists criticized the handling, the ride quality, the interior materials, and overall the car just felt underbaked and rushed to market. It also weighs a staggering 5,500 pounds, which is heavier than a 3-row Tesla Model X that uses a bigger battery. That weight really hurts the driving experience, and the throttle calibration in particular has been called almost terrifyingly laggy. But here is what does not get talked about enough. VinFast offers an absolutely insane warranty, a 10-year, 125,000-mile basic warranty, plus a 10-year battery warranty with unlimited mileage. That is genuinely unheard of in the industry. And the pricing has come way down. It originally launched around $50,000 to $55,000, but now starts closer to $40,000. And you can lease one affordably. Used examples are selling for under $20,000. So while the VF8 absolutely earned its underbaked reputation, it has quietly become a reasonable value for a budget buyer who just wants an EV and is covered by one of the best warranties in the business. Number 5 is going to be controversial because this is the best-selling EV in North America for years running, the Tesla Model 3. And before anyone starts typing angry comments, hear me out. Because the Model 3 absolutely earned its place on a most hated list, specifically because of one thing: build quality complaints. The car itself is genuinely good, and a lot of people love it. But the criticism that follows it is real and consistent. The most common complaints from owners revolve around inconsistent build quality from car to car. Some owners get a beautifully assembled Model 3 with everything fitting perfectly. Others find rattling interiors, misaligned panels, gaps that should not be there, and paint that seems thinner than what you would expect at this price point. The reliability ratings have improved significantly over the years, and the latest refresh addressed many of the long-standing complaints, but the brand still struggles to shake the reputation. And when you sell as many cars as Tesla does, even a small percentage of unhappy owners adds up to a lot of negative noise online. The other source of hate is more about the company than the car. Tesla as a brand has become deeply polarizing in recent years, and that polarization spills over onto every vehicle they make. Some people love everything Tesla does. Some people hate everything Tesla does. And the Model 3 sits right in the middle of that crossfire. But here is the fair side of the story. The Model 3 delivers genuinely class-leading range, access to the best charging network in the country, software that keeps improving through over-the-air updates, and a driving experience that has been continuously refined for nearly a decade. It is also the car that arguably did more than any other to push the entire mainstream EV market forward. For all the build quality complaints, owners overwhelmingly say they would buy another one. That tells you something. The hate is real, but the love is just as real. Number 4 is a car that genuinely had a tough launch and a tougher reputation to recover from. The Volkswagen ID.4. When this electric SUV first arrived in the US, it was supposed to be Volkswagen's big mainstream EV statement, a practical, comfortable, family-friendly electric SUV with a familiar brand behind it. But the early execution had real problems that turned a lot of buyers and reviewers against it. The biggest complaints were about the software. The early ID.4 infotainment system was slow, glitchy, and frustrating to use. Touch-sensitive controls that did not work reliably, menus buried inside other menus, and bugs that made simple tasks like adjusting the climate feel like a chore. Add in some questionable design choices like capacitive touch sliders for volume and temperature that did not even light up at night on early models, and the result was a car that felt like it was rushed before the software was ready. There were also concerns about reliability, with some recalls and reported issues affecting early production examples. For a brand like Volkswagen with a long history of refinement, the ID.4 fell short of what people expected from the badge. But here is the redemption story. Volkswagen has spent years working through those problems methodically. Software updates have addressed most of the early infotainment complaints. The 2024 newer models added illuminated touch controls. And the underlying car itself, the comfort, the interior space, the rear seat that genuinely fits adults has always been strong. The ID.4 has quietly become one of the more dependable family EVs on the market today. The hate was earned during the rough launch, but the current version of the car is significantly better than its reputation suggests. Number 3 is one of the most controversial EVs of the last few years, the Dodge Charger Daytona EV. This is the first ever mass production electric vehicle from Dodge, a brand built entirely on the identity of loud, fast, gas-guzzling muscle cars. So the moment Dodge announced an electric Charger, the internet absolutely lost its mind. Let's start with what people hate. The first big complaint is the price. The 2026 Charger Daytona starts at over $61,000, and the top trims push towards $70,000. For a car that critics say does not really know what it is, too heavy to be a true sports car at 5,700 pounds, too quirky to be a daily, and saddled with only 241 miles of range from a massive battery, that price tag feels hard to swallow on paper. The second complaint is more emotional. Hardcore muscle car fans say an electric Charger is sacrilege. The whole point of a muscle car, in their view, is the sound and fury of a giant V8 engine. An EV with fake exhaust noises piped in through the speakers? That is offensive to the purists. But here is the twist that nobody talks about. Almost no one is actually paying MSRP for these. Dealers are listing them for $40,000 to $45,000. There are even people leasing them for shockingly low monthly payments. Used examples are already showing up around 30 grand. And when you actually drive one, the Charger Daytona is genuinely a hoot. Plenty of space, massive back seats for a coupe, a fast and customizable driving experience, and looks that turn heads. The Achilles heel is real though. Owners report serious reliability issues, with some cars spending more time in service than on the road. So the hate has real merit, but the actual experience, way better than the internet would have you believe. Number two is a car that gets a surprising amount of hate considering how much potential it had on paper. The Polestar 2? Polestar is Volvo's all-electric sister brand. So this car comes with serious engineering credibility behind it. But the Polestar 2 has been one of the more polarizing EVs on the market and has earned a spot on plenty of avoid lists from major reviewers. Let's start with what people criticize. Range was a weak spot, particularly on the early models, with numbers that lagged behind competitors like the Tesla Model 3 at similar price points. The interior, while clean and Scandinavian in style, felt more cramped than rivals. The rear seat, in particular, gets criticized for limited legroom and headroom. The infotainment system, even though it runs Google built-in software, has been hit or miss, with some owners reporting glitches and slow response times. And the driving experience, while sharp, has been called heavy and not as engaging as the design suggests it should be. Reliability scores have also placed it among the EVs to avoid in some major rankings. There's also a brand identity problem. A lot of people simply do not know what Polestar is. The brand exists in this weird middle ground where it is connected to Volvo but tries to be its own thing, and that confusion has hurt sales and consumer trust. Buying a Polestar feels like a gamble to people who are not familiar with the company. But here's the fair side. The Polestar 2 actually drives quite well, has genuinely beautiful minimalist design, and the build quality where it matters is solid Volvo-level engineering underneath. The newer model years addressed many of the early range and software complaints. For the right buyer who wants something different from the usual Tesla or Hyundai pick, the Polestar 2 is a real option. The hate is partly earned and partly just unfamiliarity. Once people drive one, the opinions tend to soften considerably. And here we are at number one, the most hated EV on the entire planet, the Tesla Cybertruck. There is no other car on this list, maybe no other car in modern automotive history that generates this level of polarized response. People love it, people hate it. There is no middle ground. Let's start with what people hate. The design is the single most controversial thing about this truck. The stainless steel angular shape looks like nothing else on the road, and depending on who you ask, it is either the coolest thing ever made or the ugliest. Some people genuinely find it offensive to look at. The Cybertruck also took half a decade to actually arrive, after being revealed in 2019, and the original promise price of $40,000 never happened. The cheapest version now starts at over $72,000. There have been 10 recalls in its short lifespan, including one for an accelerator pedal that could potentially jam. And of course, there is Elon Musk himself and the various controversies surrounding him, which spill directly onto the vehicle that has become his most visible product. But here is the twist that genuinely surprised me. The Cybertruck is actually very good at being a truck. It offers 11,000 pounds of towing capacity, 16 inches of ground clearance, the ability to ford 32 inches of water, 600 horsepower, and 325 miles of range. It is somehow the lightest 300+ mile range electric pickup on the market. The steer-by-wire system, combined with rear-wheel steering, makes this massive truck shockingly maneuverable. You can do full U-turns with barely any input on the steering wheel. The full self-driving software is genuinely impressive. And inside, the cabin is quiet and comfortable. Tesla also has the best service infrastructure of any EV maker. So when something goes wrong, you can actually get it fixed. The Cybertruck is the perfect symbol for this whole list. Hated for what it represents. Genuinely capable as a vehicle. The truth sits somewhere in the middle of all the noise. So there you have it. The most hated EVs on the planet: the Fisker Ocean, the GMC Hummer EV, the older Nissan Leaf, the recall-era Chevy Bolt, the VinFast VF8, the Tesla Model 3, the Volkswagen ID.4, the Dodge Charger Daytona EV, the Polestar 2, and the Tesla Cybertruck sitting at number 1. Here's the honest takeaway. Are these cars actually bad? Not really. Some of them earn their hate during specific moments, recalls, software disasters, or company collapses. Some get hated for what they represent rather than what they actually are. And some are caught in the crossfire of brand controversies that have nothing to do with the driving experience itself. The internet loves to pile on. Hate gets clicks. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. But when you actually drive most of these cars, you find that the reality sits somewhere between the love and the hate. Most of them are genuinely capable. A few are even excellent. And every one of them is at least more interesting than yet another boring crossover that no one will remember in 5 years. Which one of these surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I am Nick, this has been Nick's Car Review, and I will see you in the next one.